Hey everybody, welcome to the GMG review. Today we're taking a look at Kill Team 2024, the Warhammer 40k core book. And this was a addition to the Hivestorm box set, which was kindly sent along as a complimentary review copy by Games Workshop. And as you can see, it has seen a lot of use for me in the last few weeks. This is the, I guess, taking a template from the new Warhammer Age of Sigmar core set of rules, onto which are bolted additional things such as the approved ops deck to play Warhammer 40,000's sort of like, I guess, core skirmish game now in its 3rd to 4th edition, depending upon when you consider it to have started, either in the pages of White Dwarf in 4th edition Warhammer 40,000 or up to today through Shadow War Armageddon, which was kind of a issue 0 Kill Team, which was I guess the Mechanicus versus Gene Stealer Cult box set, and then of course Kill Team, which was 2022, the Octavius box set through now. And this edition of the game, so I'm going to give some general thoughts before I dive in here. If you've played Kill Team 2022, this is effectively the same game. But what this core book does, and you can really see the red pen that was applied to Warhammer Age of Sigmar just recently in this game. This is the previous edition of the game minus a ton of word salad and with a lot more concise sort of like eye to modularity. The core rules themselves, if you look at the beginning of this book, the first 20-30 pages are background and sort of an overview of the game, a lovely color section, what the intent is behind the desire of making a skirmish version of Warhammer 40k. And then like just a brief overview of like the Imperium itself and what the setting and backdrop's going to look like. And then we get the core rules. The core rules themselves lead up to about page 90. So roughly 60 pages of rules here, including bespoke rules for 3 terrain sets. We have the Galadark terrain set, the Beta Decima terrain set, and the new, Kill Team Volcus terrain set, which comes in the Hivestorm box. And the principles themselves of the core rules are very much sort of like, they're modularized so that you add ways to play to this core rulebook. This was something that was done in Warhammer Age of Sigmar just recently, and Games Workshop's talked a lot about. So, like I said earlier, if you've played the core version of the game, and if you've been following Warhammer community, there's no surprises here. They've removed a lot of the stuff that's kind of in the way of the game. So for instance, having movement be like shape-based as opposed to just being in inches. A lot of the terminology on line of sight, like visibility is just model to model now from the head of the model. And what's considered blocking, obscured, and cover is very simple and defined by keywords like light and heavy for the terrains type. Vantage is its own separate set of core rules. It's got some new nested rules in it. Like for instance, if you're kind of doing plunging fire from a vantage point, you get additional rules. Like if they're engaging, you get a balanced trait, or an accurate trait on your guns. You get to reroll a die. Just the idea of like positioning being important. If you've only ever played Warhammer 40,000, let's talk about the core rules in this game. It's a 4-step turn structure. You get started at the turning point where you employ things like gambits and strategic ploys. You use your command points typically in this place for all like the whole turn long bonuses that your kill team can get. In the strategy phase, so start of turn is when you ready all your operatives. Strategy phase is the next point where you do all those gambits and ploys. Firefight phase where you go back and forth activating models, and then end of turning point, you're reset to do it again. You go on a big loop. Game lasts 4 turns. The great thing about this box set is everything you need to play you get in the box. So you're going to get a kill team, you're going to get 2 of them. The new Tempestus Aquilons, which is the drop troops, as well as the Vespids, the Stingwings. The accompanying rules, so like you get this book as well, which is the Kill Team rules for the book, Kill Team Hivestorm dossier for those 2 kill teams. A measuring device in inches. You're going to get actually 4 of those in the box set. You get the plastic ones, as well as a card stock set that comes with the tokens. A minimum of 10 6-sided dice. You're going to need more for mark and wounds. That's just a reality of this game, but 10 6-sided dice will easily do it. Tokens and markers, there are a lot of those in this game, but the most important ones are your engage and conceal tokens, these guys right here. They're also your activation markers for when models are expended. A kill zone, game board and terrain features. And as we'll see in, I just put it away, in this card back right here for approved ops and in this rule book, they give you rules for 3 separate kill zones, basically the last 3 to come out. So Beta Decima, which is the most recent one. We get the new Galadark train, which is the spaceship train, which was before that. And then of course the Volcus train, which is the one that comes in this box set. Initiative, so you goes first. Ready, every model gains a command point. If you're going second, you get 2. And then each player readies all their options. You flip everything. Then gambits, starting with the player as the initiative. Each player alternates either using a strategic gambit or passing. The player repeats this process until they've passed in succession. The most common ones are strategic ploys, but they could also be things in your tactics cards, your tac ops cards if they're in here, or certain teams like the Tempestus Aquilons actually have gambits where they will move around their drop zone markers to make it have your troops arrive where you want them to arrive. But any rule labeled strategic gambit can be used here. Then your firefight phase, determine order. So basically going from who's got the initiative, and then perform actions. You're going to save your crouching or standing. That's your 2 orders right here. So engaging or concealing. This is the only game of Warhammer where you can actually do this. And it's actually my favorite part of Kill Team. You're either standing up or you're crouching. You're using terrain to effect or you're standing up to fire. They have basically a restriction on what you can do when you're doing these 2 things. If you're engaging, you can do all the orders and you can counteract. If you're concealing, the operative cannot perform shoot and charge actions and it cannot counteract. However, it's not a valid target while in cover. So if you're in cover, you can't be shot at. Certain things like Vantage can get rid of that. And then you perform your actions. There is a list of actions that are universal that everyone can do, but you can also have actions on your cards. For instance, if you're a leader type, typically you can do a thing like support where you can give an extra action to somebody as an action on your card. So a lot of leaders have 3 action points on their stat card. They can hand them out to other people. Each action costs an action point. Typically you have 2. Most models have 2. Sometimes if you're a leader type or you're a very powerful model like a Space Marine, you can have 3. You don't need to declare all your actions when they're activated. Instead, you do them in order as you expend your action points. And then if an action is declared and begun, it's not possible, it's canceled, revert back to the game state before the action. So there's like a do-over mechanic in this game too. Expended is when you flipped your token, so whatever your order was. And interestingly enough, one of the things that's different in this edition of the game is you always deploy with a conceal order. It's funny because we used to joke playing Infinity that you would always be prone. They basically baked always be prone into Kill Team, where null deploying, both teams start like hiding from each other at the start of the game automatically, and then when you activate, you give them a new order with the determine order step of the activation phase and the firefight phase. This didn't used to be the case in Kill Team. You were stuck with your order for the duration of the first turn, and it's one of the best quality of life improvements of the game. Everybody just starts crying, and then you decide what they're doing when they activate. And then when you're expended, you can counteract. If all your models on the table are expended, and this gets weird with the drop troops actually, the Tempestus Aquilons, because they can have troops not on the table and have people be expended. And you can keep them off the table later on. You can counteract as long as no models that are deployed have a ready marker. Counteract allows you to do a single AP action for free. Each operative can only counteract once per turning point and can't move more than 2 inches while counteracting. This is not a change to their move stat, it just takes precedence, it caps their move at 2 inches. Counteracting is optional, so you can choose not to do it. In either case, activation alternates back between to your opponent afterwards. So you can have friendly operatives that are expended and have them perform a 1 AP action. So that means that you can do things like reposition, but only move 2 inches. Dash is also a reposition, but it doesn't matter because the move's capped at 2 inches anyway. Dash is capped at 3. Fall back can't be done because it's a 2 AP action. You can only do 1 AP. Charge, though, could still happen. Pickup marker could still happen. Place marker could still happen. And shoot could still happen. And that is the list of actions that are universal. So everybody can do those things. Reposition is move your move stat. Most things move 6 to 8 inches typically. If you're injured, your move stat can get reduced down by 2 inches because you're limping then. Dash is an additional action. Remember, you can only do each of these actions once per activation. So if you're repositioning, you can typically only move like 1 time. Dash is on top of that, so it's like effectively the run order. If you've got 2 AP, you'd move, then make a little dash at the end. Fallback costs you all your APL, and you can perform a reposition action, but you can't end in engagement of an enemy model. Charge costs 1, you add 2 to your movement, and you can move through control zones. Control zones are a 1-inch bubble around every miniature. But you can't make a charge, reposition, dash, or fallback in the same turn. So if you're charging, that's your only move for the turn. And then pick up marker, if you're in control range, which means an inch of like a thing on the table, you can pick it up. You can put it down as well. Shoot is an APL. Now, this is almost entirely the same as the previous edition. You roll your attack stat, they roll the defense dice. The one big difference is everyone just gets 3 defense dice now. They've removed the defense stat on the card. You just always roll 3 if you're getting shot at. And then you resolve them. A normal success blocks a normal success in the shooting roll. You're just rolling to see if you hit on whatever your shooting stat is. A crit success can block a crit success. If you roll a 6, it's a crit. A 1 always fails. And 2 normal successes can block a critical. And then you resolve them. Whatever's left in the pool after you do all your blocks gets applied. So normal damage goes in as normal damage, critical damage goes in as critical damage. And any operatives that are incapacitated are removed after the active operative finishes that action. And then fight. It's almost like a shoot attack, except both models engage with each other and control zone of each other will roll their attack dice pools. And starting with the active player, you go back and forth, either parrying, so applying one of your combat dice. If it's a crit, it can block a crit. If it's a strike, it can block a strike, or doing damage. So because you go first, very often if someone's low on health, you can just kill them with a single hit. You'll just do an attack and do that. But if you're both very healthy, you might want to block damage going back and forth. And there's special rules that can make things harder to block. So for instance, if you have the brutal rule, only crits can block your attacks, like your weapon is so big and heavy that it does tons of damage. And then this is the rest of the key principles. So I like that the parsing of these rules is really nice, because it goes, hey, here's what the turn looks like and here's all the things you can do in the turn. Then here's all the stuff afterwards. So we have context in the layout of how the rules are done now, of what we're going to be doing during the turn, what the turn's going to look like. Now here's the general principles of the stuff. In previous editions, they would have put the stat card and the control zones and like the key principles before everything else, and you don't really have any context for it. So I actually like this restructuring of the rulebook for being like, here's the stuff you're doing during the turn, now here's how all this stuff fits into it. Control range, I told about, but basically it's an inch around your base. Data cards, they've streamlined these immensely, and it is a big quality of life improvement, right? So all your weapon, like all your attacks basically are going to be down here. The Tempestus Aquilon Tempestor, sorry, he's the leader type. These are all the weapons he could have. Now, word of advice when building these miniatures, you only get one right las pistol. So if you want to build the Tempestus Aquilon with a power sword and las pistol, you cannot build your gunfighter specialist. So you have to give him either the pointing fingers or a different weapon loadout. So I just made mine with the pointing fingers and the power sword and just assumed his pistol was like holstered somewhere. So I could build all the cool models, but they don't give you enough pieces to build both, which was kind of a bummer. So you can see, yeah, AP, he's got 3 because he's a leader type. Move is 6 inches, save 4+, and wounds 9, so how much damage they can take. Interesting they didn't change wounds to health here. I really thought they were going to, because you can see so much of the Warhammer Age of Sigmar like learning in the rejiggering of this rulebook. I was really surprised this didn't get labeled health, but because wounds are called wounds still in Warhammer 40,000, I'm betting the decision was made to keep them called wounds here as well. You have your attack stats, so how many attack dice do you roll, what do you need to roll to hit, what your normal damage is, what your critical damage is on the side there, and any special rules. They've also removed critical effect rules. If a rule is on a critical, it'll say in that rule itself. Everything's just weapon rules. So like lethal 5+, cap range at 8, all that stuff. It's not a shape anymore, it's just how far they move. And also you can see your move stats are just in inches. You get your keywords too, so like what kill team you're from, and then other kill team words might be triggering special rules and stuff in the rules for your actual stat book or your kill team. Hey, dice, what a D6 and D3 is, what a distance is, what intervening is. So if something's blocking the point on your model to both sides of their base, it's now intervening. Then if you're trying to draw a line of sight from here, it's not intervening. So like if you can draw a line of sight from anywhere on your base to both sides of the model, that terrain is no longer intervening. So you can't hug walls and claim cover. It's not from closest point to both sides, which a lot of older games were. In this one, it's just, hey, can I lean out and see all of you? Then I can see all of you. So that's targeting lines, keywords, they're on the bottom there. I talked about kill zone flow, that's the base of the terrain. So like the cardboard mat that you're playing on. Markers are anything that's not a miniature, so any of the cardboard stuff would be considered markers. There's also some markers that would be in plastic because they've done a lot of universal equipment that way too. Obscured, so again, and this is such better word salad, or less word salad. The line of sight for what obscured was and what line of sight was before, the text for that in the old rulebook was like incredibly legalistic versus what it is now. When an operative shooting, the target is obscured if the attacker must discard 1 success of their choice instead of retaining it. All the attacker's critical successes are retained as normal successes and can't be changed to critical successes. So it takes precedence over everything else. Obscured is determined when one operative, usually when one of them shooting. An operative is obscured if it's intervening heavy terrain. However, it can't be obscured by intervening heavy terrain if it's within 1 inch of either operative. So like if you're both on other side, you're not obscured. But if you're shooting across something that's heavy and you're active, again, heavy terrain will typically just block line of sight if you're crouching. This is a relatively new rule. You just lose a success. So like not even after saves are made. It's like the opposite of cover. Cover, you get to retain a save, and this one you just lose a success, and also all your crits are normal hits. Operative B is visible, so this is just what heavy terrain does when you're shooting, and this is relatively new. So obscured is a relatively new term. Cover is just cover. Obscured is just when terrain's heavy. So heavy terrain is, I think there's only 2 pieces of small heavy terrain in this box set, but it requires you to be visible, but not have clear line of sight across both sides. So if you're taking advantage of that. And then operatives, it's your miniatures. Orders, the 2 order tokens. Ploys, these are the things you can spend CPs on in your kill team. Command rerolls universal, so you can roll an attack or defense dice, but only attack or defense dice for a CP. And then precedence. In some rare rules, things will conflict with each other. So you have to establish precedence. The rule takes precedence if it specifically says so. If the online designer's commentary says so, it's not found in the core book. It says cannot, and the player with initiative then decides to break the tie. Roll off, roll 2 dice and try and roll higher. Tokens, these are all the things that aren't necessarily markers. Valid targets, some rules require you to have a valid target. It's most common when an operative shooting, but in some rare cases it requires you to do so. So like you need to be a valid target sometimes to use like psychic powers or like be able like have line of sight stuff. This is most common when operative shooting. So if the intended target has an engage order and it's a valid target if it's visible. So like if your model can see that model and it's visible, then it has line of fire. If the intended target has a conceal order, it's a valid target if it's visible to the operative and not in cover. So if any part of your model can see both sides of its base, it's now a valid target. That's it. Visible, for something to be visible, my model must be able to see your model. If you can draw a straight line 1 millimeter in diameter from its head to any part of what's trying to see, ignore operative's bases when determining this. An operative is always visible to itself. The enemy operative is visible if both images below, even when partially behind a ruin. Then we get all our kill zone stuff. So climbing, an operative must be within 1 inch horizontally and 3 inches vertically of terrain in order to climb it. Each climb is designated to be a minimum of 2 inches vertically. Dropping, an operative can drop down for free the first 2 inches, but then you got to pay every inch after that out of your movement stat. Some models can ignore this, like for instance the drop troops, the Tempestors, they get to ignore all the vertical movement when they drop because they have their grav chutes. And then jumping, an operative can jump from terrain when they move off it. They can move up to 4 inches horizontally from the edge when they jump. Done like any other move except in 1 straight line increment, the operative must then drop or climb from there. So what's cool is you can move out 4 inches during a jump as long as you can pay for the distance down. And then terrain types. So these are using other terrain than the terrain provided in this box, or the Beta Decima terrain, or the Galadark terrain. Now, it's nice that they give you like examples of what this would look like and all the special rules for it. So what heavy means, what light means, what blocking means, what vantage means, and what accessible means. So blocking terrain is stuff that like is like a big heavy pipe. So for instance, if you can't see my whole base and I'm behind that, I'd get the blocking special rule, which would give things cover and obscured. Also things like doors. The door's viewpoint is blocking terrain. The broken vent is blocking terrain. So if you can see through something, even though it's like relatively obscured, then it would count as being blocking, which means cover and obscuring. Vantage, which is like elevation points. Accessible, which means you can move through it. So operatives can move through accessible terrain, but it counts additional inch to do so. Only the center of an operative's base needs to be able to move through accessible terrain, so base size is irrelevant. So doors are accessible. It means even though it blocks line of sight, it's blocking, you can walk through it. So it's kind of like a Star Trek door. It goes whoosh, whoosh, and moves out of the way when you move. You just pay an inch to open and close it. Insignificant, does nothing. Exposed, ladders or hang chains are exposed terrain. So exposed terrain is very small terrain with large gaps. It's never considered to be cover and obscured. It's never intervening. So like you can't hide behind a chain and get cover, or a ladder and get cover. And then we get specific rules for the Volcus terrain, specific rules for the Galadark terrain, specific rules for the close quarters stuff for Galadark, and then Beta Decima, specific rules for hazardous areas. I haven't gotten to try these out yet, but I have all this stuff painted, so I'm excited to play in spaceships and also play in the weird sea planet. And then the most exciting thing, oh, and then setting up kill zones using other terrain. And of course, there are specific terrain layouts in here in the approved ops card pack. And then we get missions. We only get one mission in this book. So without the approved ops, and this is funny because this is different from the previous rule books. We only get a single mission to play in here called Preliminary Op, and it's just a victory point scoring mission. You get some terrain layouts for Galadark and for using the core rules. It uses kill ops, crit ops, so these are like the they're actually replicated in the approved ops pack. So kill ops is part of approved ops and crit ops are as well, but there are no tac ops in here. So it's only 2/3 of the scoring ways that you score inside this book. And there aren't any special tac ops for kill teams either. So one of the things that's missing in Hivestorm, the dossier, is that there's no like bespoke ways for kill teams to earn points. It's like little 40k. The Leviathan deck provides you 4 tac ops. Everything else is pretty universal. There are, however, I believe 9 different crit ops in here. So you get 3 in the book. There's 6 more in this card deck, which also comes in Hivestorm. And you also score for killing now too, based upon the size of the team when you start. And now this is the thing I'm most excited about, which is the Joint Ops Mission Pack. This is, you'll see a live Let's Play today with me and Chris from Lords of War Games and Hobbies, where we play through the first of these. This is the rules for NPOs, so how you have your sort of like generic stand-ins for baddies. It's almost like a D&D adventure. Their behaviors and threat principle stuff. Now, I'm a little bit critical of this and also a little bit inspired. Two reasons. First is, there are some missing rules in here. So for instance, when a fight action happens for an NPO, it will tell you who it's going to target. So it's going to target the wounded models first, an objective marker within its control range first, and a ready model. These are who they would fight in order of priority. It doesn't tell you how to apply the fight damage. So like when you make the fight action, there's no actual guidance on here onto like, so I'm going to get fought by this guy now. How does it, what order does it apply its dice in? How does it block and parry and stab? You don't get any of that in here. You don't get any of the rules for like how it would behave in that situation. It's just missing. So there is a general principle at the beginning of this of like how to do behaviors and how, like, you should definitely use your best judgment in how these guys would behave. But it's missing a few really simple granular pieces you could have given advice on with a couple lines of text to make these make sense, right? So like, for instance, when you're shooting, when you're making a shooting action, it's really easy to apply the damage. The damage gets applied the same pretty much every time. When you're doing a fight action, it's not, and there's no guidance on how to do that. So while this is a good start and it's a generic, it's literally only 2 pages of text and then the NPO cards, followed by the remainder of it being these 3 missions. It's a really cool start. It gives you a little bit of extra stuff in here. It's 4 pages out of this rule book. And I get that this is not, this is just like what's in the core rules. So this is what you would need to know to do like a very basic solo and co-op mission. My disappointment is there's nothing in it. There's no joint operation in here. There's no adventure for me to have either as or against stuff in Hivestorm. I was hoping this would get expanded in here. This is just kill team rules. Additionally, there is no spec ops rules at all. So there is no campaign system in here. There is just the multiplayer mission pack and how you do an elimination op. So this is like the playing with more than one player competitive way. This is the playing more than one player solo and cooperative way. The core rules have nothing in it. There's some token reference guides. The core and this is actually really handy. The quick cheat sheet. I wish this was on cardboard in the box. There's nothing additionally in here for spec ops and for playing like a campaign system. Maybe that'll be its own book. I'm hoping with what this looks like that we'll get just a completely separate book of like adventure material and RPG stuff. But so far in the Hivestorm box set, there is absolutely nothing in the core rules about playing linked narrative missions of Kill Team. There is solo and co-op core, like basic rule mechanic stuff in here. It's missing some stuff. It's missing like how do you apply close combat damage. It focuses primarily on like how do you activate the models and like what order do you move them in, but not the nitty gritty of like what do they do during the course of the game. So what I'm hoping is that, and how to apply combat damage is that would happen in any solo and co-op game. So like that's just missing from this book. That isn't the kind of thing you would hold back for like a spec ops kind of campaign supplement. So I'm a bit disappointed by that. It's a cool start. It feels like it's only 2 pages of text. It could have been a bit more thought out, a bit more play tested maybe. Maybe it will get revised in some type of spec ops book where we get a campaign system, because there's also nothing for spec ops in the dossier, period. Right? There used to be in the previous dossiers a whole section on spec ops for doing campaign stuff, and it just doesn't exist. So they're either gonna like introduce this might be the thing that like once they've done dossiers for the rest of the season and 8 kill teams are out, because I'm assuming there's gonna be 3 more of these dossiers over the course of this year. Because it's kind of been, we've had 8 kill teams kind of per season. Maybe they'll do like a Spec Ops book at the end that then releases like the special rules for all those Spec Ops. I don't want to go a whole year just playing baby 40K approved ops though. So the core book's cool. I'm excited for there to be like some joint and Spec Ops stuff in here. You can definitely write more content for it. It does seem like it's missing just a tiny bit of the rules, like how do you apply combat damage? There needs to be some guidance on there to do that. But for the most part, this is a vast quality of life improvement for Kill Team. It just feels better. It has more like concise language. The writing is better done. And whoever they got from whatever inspiration they took from what they did to AOS this past year has been judiciously applied to cutting out all the clutter. And like I said earlier, word salad that made the previous edition. It's approachable, but it's not, the on-ramp isn't as wide because of it kind of having rules for rules' sake and being cluttered in the language and kind of bogged down in legalese. Like it worked, it was mechanically sound, but you can't internalize the information as easily when it's written like a legal document, right? This is much more conversationally worded, much better designed to be approachable to more people, and feels like it's going to be a better initial outlay or initial sort of like reference point to playing Kill Team in the future. So I'm really excited about it. Good job on slaying your darlings, Kill Team design team, and pulling out the way maybe the designers would want it to read to making it more accessible to the way that more customers can now read it and find it approachable and find it engaging. So excited about the core team, or the core rulebook for Kill Team. You guys can check out more reviews today on all the Kill Team card packs, the Hivestorm dossier, and everything else I got it going on. So big thanks for watching. We'll see you for more Kill Team stuff today and in the future. Till then, I'm Ash. Have a great day.